Hi, this is William from Great Affordable Watches, and today I thought I'd go through some tips and what to look for when buying a vintage King Seiko. So this will basically be a buying guide to King Seikos in general, but some of the things I will bring up in this video can be applied to vintage watches. But I will primarily focus on King Seikos in this video. Before we start the video, I just want to do a quick wristwatch check. And I'm wearing my new to me Omega Geneve. I think it looks great. It's a great size, between 35-36 millimeters. It's got a amazing legendary movement, the Cal 565. So if you want to see more videos about vintage watches in general, just let me know down in the comment section. And if you want a video on each of these models specifically, because there is a bit of a lack of King Seiko content on YouTube, and I think from personal experience that a video on these somewhat popular models, at least these two are pretty common popular, could help you when you are intending to buy a King Seiko. And one more thing before we start the video, I've done a collaboration with some fantastic YouTubers here on YouTube, and you can find the video on Teddy Baldassar's channel, and it's about what watches we have been wearing lately. And I highly recommend that you guys check it out because I think it's a great video. It was very fun to be part of it, and yeah, so go check it out. I will leave a link to it down in the description. But now let's get right into the video. I have three King Seikos here in front of me. I got the King Seiko 5625, 7040, 5626, 7110, and the 5626, 8010. These two are made by Suva, and this one is made by Diani. Basically, King Seiko had two factories competing with each other to make the absolute best watch in the 60s and 70s, and this is basically the result of that competition. It was of course a somewhat friendly competition back then. And I know that it can be a bit scary to buy your first vintage watch. I still think it's a bit scary to buy a vintage watch because sometimes it's very hard to know what you are actually looking for and are supposed to look at. So I thought I'd put together a video with some tips and what to look for when buying especially King Seikos. And we can start with the dial, as this is one of the most important things when it comes to King Seikos. And as I said, this is the 5626, 7110, and basically all King Seikos I have seen have a slight sunburst effect on the dial. It's pretty hard to pick up, but you can see the sunburst pattern very slightly here, and that's a good sign that the watch is not a refinished dial, because on refinished or repainted dials they often got a very flat looking dial without this gorgeous sunburst effect. And the strength of this sunburst effect varies depending on the model of course, but from my experience every King Seiko have a sunburst like effect. And if it got a sunburst effect, that's a good indicator that the dial is original, but you can also tell by the text under Seiko and under KS. This text should have a very specific font like this and be very crisp. All King Seikos have very crisp and precise text, so if the text is not very sharp, a bit blurry, perhaps that's a good indication that the watch is a redial or rework. So as we can see on all of these watches that this text is very sharp and very precise, like a King Seiko should be. So this is probably the best indication if a King Seiko is a redial or not. Another important thing to note is that sometimes the seller or the watchmaker replaces the dial, so they take a case and put another dial on the case. So my best advice to check this is that you compare the exact watch you're looking to buy, the one you're intending to buy, and compare it with the exact same model on Google. So just Google the model number you're looking to buy and compare the watches so the watch looks exactly the same. The text here can vary a bit. For example, the 7110, this is the reference 7110. It says 7110T here on the dial. This watch can also have the 71R on the dial, and it's still the original dial. But in general, it should match up between models. So if, for example, you got this case and it says 7000, that's an indication that the dial have been replaced with another King Seiko model. So while it's still an original King Seiko dial, it's not the original dial to that specific model. To sum that up, just compare the watch you're intending to buy with the same model on Google. Just Google it and compare it, so it looks the same and all the text is the same or almost the same. Another thing to look for is the crystal. The original crystal got an angle like this, so it's not a boxed crystal. Aftermarket crystal usually have a boxed, just a straight crystal and goes up and out. So an original crystal should look something like this, basically the same. This is also a watch from Suva, but from Diani they are a bit flatter, but look something like this. So check the crystal. Is it a box? Then it's not a original crystal. Does it look like this? Then it's probably a original crystal. The next thing to look for is the crown. Almost all King Seikos, there are a few exceptions, but the most common King Seikos and the most popular ones have a signed case crown. And most models look like this. There are some slight variations that are pretty hard to notice between this one and this one, for example. They look almost identical, but on early King Seikos like this and the 5626 7000, it looks something like this. And on some other King Seikos, for example this one, it looks something like this. This is a pretty rare King Seiko, but these two are a bit more common. And on this one it should look like this, with a pretty small outer ring around the KS, and also like this. Okay, let's move on. Another very important thing, and this can be applied to almost all, if not all, vintage watches, and that's the sharpness of the case, and that all the angles are very sharp. You don't want a watch that has been over polished. You still want to have the original case shape like this. So look for all the edges and see if they are rounded, then it means it's basically over polished. And if they are sharp like this, it means it's in good condition and not overly polished. This is another great example of that. This exact model have a very distinct shape of the lugs, as we can see here, and it's very common to see that these watches are almost round here on the lugs. So keep a lookout for round edges. They should all be very sharp like this. So that's a very important thing to look for. And this can also be applied to all vintage watches. Basically, you don't want a round watch, you want a watch that retains its original shape. Okay, the last thing I will bring up in this video is the case back. And this is very famous with King Seikos, the gold medallion. And most people really like the medallion of these old King Seikos, and I am a fan of it, of course. And as we can see, the medallion looks great on this one. Some slight damage, but that's to be expected. It's almost perfect, in very good condition. And it can be a bit tricky to find a King Seiko with a medallion like this. They are often very damaged and sometimes even replaced with an aftermarket medallion. And in that case, it often says just Seiko or it looks weird in some other way. You definitely notice if it's an aftermarket medallion, and I would avoid an aftermarket medallion because I think the original one looks really good. So on early King Seikos, the medallion looked like this on non-chronometer grade King Seikos, and on chronometer grade King Seikos it looks something like this. This is a bit dirty, but in otherwise very good condition. One thing to note, on the chronometer grade King Seikos, it says chronometer here, and the King Seiko and the Seiko logo here is a bit smaller than on the non-chronometer grade King Seiko. So they look a bit different, but as I said, try and find a King Seiko with a good looking medallion that looks something like this or this. On later King Seikos, they changed the medallion to a plain Seiko caseback like this, or with these two watches they have a non-medallion caseback but with text that looks similar to this. So with newer King Seikos you can find them without the medallion and they are still original. For example, newer models of this one doesn't have the King Seiko medallion, and that's completely fine. It's still original, of course, so just keep that in mind. I would look for a watch with the medallion because I think it looks great. So if you find a King Seiko without the medallion, don't freak out. It is still original. I will put some pictures up here so you can see how a King Seiko without the medallion looks like. There are a couple of variations, but they tend to look something like this. Okay, I hope you guys liked this video, and as I said, I really enjoy doing videos about vintage watches and especially King Seikos. I think King Seikos are among the absolute best vintage watches you can get in this price range, around $500 plus minus $200 perhaps. They offer great value, they have fantastic movements, finishing and all that. If you haven't already, I can highly recommend that you pick up a King Seiko. They are really good looking. So just let me know down in the comment section if you want more videos like this. And if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And hit that famous bell button if you want notifications. And thanks for watching. I hope I see you in the next one. Bye.